I'm gonna be spending the next couple of minutes here talking about that beautiful boy, the Commando. Mainly because some of the discourse surrounding my wonderful son is really fucking negative. So, I'm gonna try to voice my opinion on him with tact, and in a very sensible, might I even say, perspicacious way? Alright, whatever, let's start off with this kid. The Commando is supposed to be a jack-of-all-trades type of character, you know, someone who's decent in a wide variety of situations, and for the most part, his abilities reflect this. Now, there are some weaknesses in his kit, but let's just go down the list. His primary, double tap, fires off 2 shots at 90% damage. It's a pretty simple skill with little nuance at first glance, you know, alright damage, good fire rate, with a bit of damage drop off and some bloom that makes dealing with distant boys a little bit of a hassle. The real fancy bit here is that it procs items like a motherfucker, so on-hit effects are going to be your bread and butter. Now, for a secondary, you've got a long range and a short range option. The long range, phase round, fires off a projectile that pierces enemies and terrain. This makes up for the downside that his primary has. It doesn't have any damage drop off. I think it's alright, it just gets utterly dunked on by the other option, Phase Blast. Think of it as a shotgun. Crazy fucking damage up close, but absolutely no range. But it is a bit spooky because you gotta get right up into an enemy's ass to use it. The damage is well worth it, and it's ultimately not as risky thanks to his utility. Tactical dive. While it's a genuinely useful skill, it's not going to wow anybody. It's a dodge roll. That's it. You can use it in any direction. It's a pretty short cooldown, which is neat. The biggest drawback with it is a surprising lack of iframes. Other than that, it ain't bad. Lastly, his special ability options, or really just option in my opinion, that being suppressive fire. This ability sends out 6 rounds that stun enemies at 100% damage each. Now this is one you're going to want to use to interrupt boys before they can get off some big attacks, namely the golems and big fuck off Lemurians. Frag grenade is the alternate option. You toss a frag that explodes for 175% damage, dealing up to 4 times as much damage the closer a boy is to the center of the blast. You can keep a stack of 2 of them up at a time. Seems like a good option, right? Because the Commando's lack of AoE with a skill on a relatively short cooldown. In practice, it just feels a little clunky and mediocre to me. I like the idea of the ability. I feel it just needs a couple of tweaks in order for it to be in a really good spot. Now, this is the loadout I enjoy using the most. You got your double tap for proccing effects like crazy, your roll to get out of spooky situations, phase blast for burst damage, and suppressive fire for shutting down big attacks. Let's say this is the default loadout other people use, because it's the most optimal loadout, as it's what I use, and being the proud owner of a good brain, I am always right and never wrong. So, what's to hate about a kit like that? Well, let's freaking talk about it. You want to try to prioritize those on-hit effects with this boy. Stuff like the ukes, the scythe, and the bands. I typically stay on levels to get as many items as possible. Since this is a game where shit gets harder the more time goes on, it probably makes me a dumbass, but whoops. I mean, I feel like you've got good reason to take your time with the Commando in order to get stacked. That being my beautiful boy is pretty dang reliant on items, more so than any other character I feel. And to me, that seems to stem from a couple of things. The first is that, while he does put out pretty constant damage, he doesn't particularly do a lot of it. This means you're going to be spending a lot of time shooting at boys, which can be a bit of a good thing. Got the right items. If you don't have anything to proc, your run's going to be going nowhere fast. Next, and I'm going to bring it up again, is a lack of innate AoE. Finally, his iffy mobility. While he can do some Bam Margera level shit by rolling into stuff at funny angles, my son's movement is a bit underwhelming, which means you're going to need to be decent at kiting boys around. So, Commando's a boy with a very simple, lightly versatile kit that's easy to understand. Sure, he's got some weaknesses right out of the gate, but they aren't that massive, at least not compared to some of the drawbacks other characters have. These issues can be fixed really easily with a couple of good items. In a game that's got a character from TF2, Gray Fox, and a big fucking lady, man who has 2 gun is, you know, not that exciting. Just fine. And yeah, he's got some legitimate problems. Frag grenade exists. The iframes on his roll seems to have just fucking disappeared on the transition from 1 to 2, but hey, this game's still fucking early access, right? These are problems that could be addressed, so I'm not gonna lose any sleep over it. At the end of the day, some people might just not like his playstyle. Like I said earlier, that's fine. Just please stop bullying him. He's a good boy. He just wants to proc items. Leave him alone.